And we use it a lot. I'm just going to hit, as I think this is helpful because some of this stuff, like I'll never be this guy right here. I love this guy. But when it comes to just general knowledge, how many guys have that person in your church that's just super knowledgeable about gear? All right, they're pointing to you, at least. You may have not have known that until now,
All
but
of South
you
Africa
should know
knows.
now. You're the guy. I've learned, make these people your friends. This is the cheat sheet. You don't actually have to read the manuals. You don't have to do any of the work that they put in, but you can benefit.
It's very true. We actually built this pedal board for Jeremy
literally
because we were so sick of him going on the road with
Precisely.
this giant plank of wood.
That's right.
That had his pedals bolted and taped to it, and they would
Right.
fall apart.
Right.
And they sounded okay.
And it didn't sound awesome. So I just said, hey, and literally, I'm never the guy. Like I know what good tone sounds like, but my ability to actually dial that in myself is pretty limited. Especially because I use in-ears, and I never totally know whether what I'm hearing in my ears is what's good or not. So what I do almost 90% of the time on a Sunday morning or an event like this is I'll allow Dan or I'll allow Mike. I said, hey, can you go back to my amp and can you dial it in? And they'll have me turn off all of my pedals because that affects your tone, and they'll dial in the best tone that they can get, just my guitar and the amp. And then I'll hit my boost pedal, which is the thing that kind of pushes the drive. It kind of breaks your guitar up, makes it a little dirty in a good way. And then from there, I pretty much all I use, guys, is I have a DD5 because it allows its tap tempo. So because I don't have time to get down there and tweak my pedal board and put in 175 or whatever it is. But I can do what I need to do just tapping it with my foot, you know. So I'm like, okay, here's the tempo. They'll feed me the click in my ear, and I'll tap it in on my delay, and then I'm good to go. So that works for me as a worship leader. I don't have time to mess with my pedal board. That's why I have a very, very simple pedal board. I mainly use drive, and I use delay, and I do have a compressor now, which is what they bought for me.
Yeah.
But I've let them...
He doesn't even know what it does, but all he knows is his guitar feels
right.
better.
If the light
It's
turns
on all the
red,
time.
it's a good thing. Okay. But actually, I do want to talk about getting tone really quickly because
It's good.
I mean, I think, and this could just be our approach, but we like the way we do it. Obviously, we do it. That being said, if you have a pedal board full of pedals and you typically, you know, your order of service per se would be to just turn on the pedals you want and then play through the amp and then dial your tone from your pedals. That's, for our world, that would be a big mistake because the biggest component to getting great tone out of your guitar and your amp is basically, you know, making sure that your guitar and your amp sound good together before you add all like 15 different equations into it that could, you know, complicate the problem just immensely. So for Jeremy and for Mike, you know, and for Kyle and all the other guys that would come on the road with us or do any recordings anywhere, guitar, amp, no pedals, just get good tone out of that first, making sure you're dialing in exactly how you want it. Just kind of just before it gets like really overdriven, just where it's nice and creamy. You guitar players know creamy, like soup du jour. You know what I'm saying? Soup of the day. Yeah, that's a movie quote. It's cool. Don't worry about it. And then adding the pedals on after that. You know, that way I think it's really important to realize that the pedals on your board, pedal drive is not nearly as good as tube amp overdrive. They will never compete. There will never be a gold medal in this position over what you can get out of that. Does that make sense? So yeah, that's my thought on it.
And one last thing on tone, the biggest part or the biggest contributing factor to good tone is actually your fingers and your playing. You know, as a guitar player, we've all been in there where we're like, man, I don't know what's going on. I've done everything I can with my gear, but my guitar is not sounding right. And for me, 90% of that has been my playing. So yeah, kind of like I started things off with, just go back to playing and maybe sit down and practice a lot for a week, and then, you know, then think about how your tone sounds after that. And I think most of you will find like, oh yeah, this sounds a lot better.
It's actually super interesting. They did. There was a studio in, I don't know where it was, Nashville or something, and this guy just really wanted to sound like Santana. Anybody know Santana? I'm not exactly a fan of Santana. you know, he's awesome. He's great. But he has a very distinct sound. And this is just to illustrate his point. But Santana basically has this very, very distinct sound. You can hear it across, you know, the 30 million records he's played on that all sound the same. And essentially, this guy really wanted to sound like him, so he bought all the same gear. And, you know, he was really going for it. He could not make that guitar sound like Santana, even though everything was the exact same. And, you know, somebody handed Santana a really crappy Squier Strat, and sure enough, it sounded exactly like Santana. Just to illustrate the point that it's all in your technique and your fingers and what you've developed as your style of playing into your instrument. And surprisingly, if you put the practice in, it actually comes out quite nicely, as some people have figured out. I don't know. Jeremy, what you thinking? I think we should hand it to...
One last thing, right-hand technique is also really important. As far as how hard you're hitting the guitar, your dynamic in that hand will have a lot to do, especially if you're using a good tube amp. You notice that if you hit the strings lighter, it'll be a cleaner sound. If you hit harder, it'll be dirtier. Being conscious of that and practicing the different levels of strumming is really, really important. And also, the picks you use. A lot of your worship leaders probably use these really, really thin picks. If you're a lead guitar player, stay far away from those because they sound awful. For those of you who use thinner picks, maybe try using something thicker, and you'll find you get a lot more body and a lot more meat out of your guitar. And then same thing with strings. You know, keeping your strings new, you know, isn't exactly easy for everybody. I know I had a time in life where I, you know, had to, you know, pinch the penny and not buy a lot of strings. But as fresh and as new as you can keep your strings, it'll really, really, really help your tone. So,
and that's actually a great thing to talk about too, really quickly. Is, you know, he's talking about the dynamic range on a guitar. You know, you play lightly, it's going to sound cleaner, and if you play a little harder, it's going to sound dirtier. That will not be the case if you're using a solid state amp.
True. So that's guitar. I'm going to pass it on to JP. I know that was a little bit helter-skelter. I'm not really good at the group talk thing, so.
Oh, you did great, baby.
Oh, thanks, man.
This is John Paul, everybody. Everybody say hi really quickly.
Yeah.
JP, just actually, Mike, a question. A lot of our guys play acoustic guitar. Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of our leaders are leading from acoustic. Do you guys ever put the acoustic through pedals, or is it just how do you get a good sound on your acoustic? Because that's kind of mainstream for us every week.
Well, acoustics are a little different, but Brian and JP do actually use some pedals and stuff with their acoustics. Obviously, an acoustic is a very naked instrument. It's bare bones. Like, what you hear is what you're going to get. So most of it, probably 90% of it, is going to boil down to having a really, really good acoustic guitar that sounds good on its own. After that, though, but preamps and compression and reverb can really, really go a long way into making your acoustic sound awesome. Brian's got this preamp called a D-Tar, and what's it? The Solstice, I think? I think it's called a D-Tar Solstice. Equinox, that's it. And it's really, really incredible. So if you guys can get them here, maybe try looking into getting one of those. But a good preamp is really essential. And same with reverb. You know, we all know what reverb is, and it can actually make your acoustic sound really, really big. Outside of that, there's not really any pedals or stuff you would want to put on acoustic, but a great acoustic guitar with a good preamp in it and maybe a reverb pedal or something will get you really, really, really far.
I like a good flange.
And playing ability. Well, also, sorry. With an acoustic, you can bury a lot of things behind an electric in a big sound. But probably the best live acoustic player we have at the church as a worship leader is Brian, by far. And I can pick up a guitar that Brian has made sound gorgeous, and I can make it sound terrible. Okay, so a lot, like to whatever degree, you know, with electric guitar playing, technique helps your tone. You could take that level up 100% probably with an acoustic. And I know all the proper things in my head about how to play the acoustic instrument. And but I'm like a Mumford & Sons, you know, kind of guy. Like, I destroy, I pulverize the instrument, you know. I bring it into submission every service.
We call it Riddle strums. If you watch the stream on a Sunday morning, Jeremy gets into it. And you'll notice when he's really feeling it, because he'll go from normal strummings to... And it'll settle down a little bit and go right back into it. It's great.
Yeah. So, and no matter how many times I've tried to train myself to not pulverize the instrument, knowing that I'm destroying any chance one could have at good tone, it doesn't totally resonate. So that should bring some of you guys a lot of peace. But peace. Maybe. All right, we're going to let JP rock this.
All right. Actually, real quick before we go into drums, for tips for acoustic, a lot of times, even just where you place your right hand has a really big deal, and translates very, very differently out there as far as just definition. A lot of the time, people usually play right over the sound hole or closer to the neck, and it gets like a warmer sound, but it doesn't actually pick through, and you get this it's just kind of muddy. And you'll actually notice that when you get closer to the fretboard, the strings are just a little bit looser, so you get some of that I don't know how to explain it, almost like you're flamming on the strings. It just sounds dirty. So what I do, and Brian and I do, we go back right to the, I don't know if we have the guitar, well, we don't have acoustic, but right where the sound hole is, yeah, pretty much. Let's just assume that this is the sound hole. Instead of playing here or here, I played just a little bit back. And playing right here actually makes everything extremely crisp and clear. It's not the brittle sound, it just comes out really, really clear. And that's how you get, like, Brian will just play really, really simple stuff, and it sounds gorgeous. And someone else will grab it, and it just, sounds super distorted. And another tip with playing acoustic is don't try to be the lead player. And don't try to get volume out of your guitar by the intensity of your strum. You hitting the guitar. Actually, this is something I had to learn personally. This isn't even a bash on Jared, but breaking strings has nothing to do with the anointing. It has everything to do with your technique. You can actually train yourself to just hit a cap in your head, or just in your mind from sitting down and practicing. This is as hard as I'll get. And so when you start the set, you don't get there. And you can even think I think the same way as a drummer would think, I'm not going to give everything right off the first verse. I'm going to wait till at least the bridge or the second chorus, of course after the bridge. Same thing with guitar, save the moments, and it'll actually fit incredibly well into the mix. And then over time, people will actually trust you more. You won't be that guy that just kind of, and what I mean by trust is the sound guys will actually put you in the mix rather than just sound like you're just a guy hitting a shaker. There it is.
She likes the pedals.
That's awesome. That's sweet.
Mike, she just needs your guitar now, man.
That's awesome. Well, I'm going to talk about drums. Yeah, this is an interesting subject because I've only been playing for a couple years.
Isn't he awesome? Come on.
It's a little bit different than most because I didn't play drums until I got to, I think we're still in Babyland. Okay. Precious. I didn't actually play drums until I got to Bethel. And I was an acoustic guitar player primarily. And just picked up some sticks for auditions just because I didn't make worship leader. So I was like, it can't be that bad. Just hit some stuff. So I hopped up, and they asked me if I ever played click track, and I lied to them and said, yeah, of course, that thing that dip, 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 dip. I've heard that before. So I get on the kit, and they shove these things in my ears, and it just felt like I just had two fists just punching my brain. And everybody around me was just like, here I am to worship. And I just got these, it's like UFC, just constantly destroying my cranium. And it was pretty awful. But thank you. And I'd say for about the first year, it was pretty brutal. So I mean, I love click now, but just to give you guys a reality on the click, it's a little funky curve, and it's definitely different. But I can promise you, from playing for a few years, that it's like my best friend now. And in spontaneous moments, to arrange parts, to even creative moments that we've arranged, or turning the click off in certain parts and turning it back on, it's become another instrument. And I would encourage the drummers first to get onto the click track without even telling, like, the worship leader or the guitarist, the bass player, like, just practice with a click track all the time. Practice the songs that you have. If you have an iPhone or any kind of smartphone, download a metronome app. And what you would do before they ever ask of you, be prepared. What it looks like is, say you're playing a tune, and right before they kind of start, you can get the pattern of it. Just go on your phone and just click it out, and then write it down on a piece of paper or save it on a notepad or whatever. And then over time, just start to memorize these songs, just like worship leaders will memorize songs by the keys, memorize the songs by the BPMs. We're going to do To Our God, oh, that's 74. Or we're going to do this song, oh, that's 76. We're going to do this song, oh, that's 158. You start to memorize it in this, and then what happens is internally you get this clock going, and you immediately know, where we're going to go. And what happens over time is you actually build a trust with the whole band. The band starts to trust you, like, wow, his timing is just really solid. And you don't have to play a single fill. You don't have to get fancy. Just you being solid over time is the most beneficial thing you could do in playing drums. And then over time, you can even start these conversations with the worship leader, like, hey, what do you think about introducing click? And you can even start it with, like, hey, you don't even need it. I'll just be playing click. I've been playing for a little while, so let's try it out during practice and see if they like it. Over time, the end goal is that everybody has click. And for all you worship leaders out there that are like, here we go, I promise you, it'll help in your songs. It'll help in spontaneity parts. It'll help in prophetic parts. It'll help just in the overall leadership of anything you want to do. If you have that click track, I'm just a huge fan of it. And honestly, all of our worship leaders that you'll see them that are the most rhythmical, or the ones that seem like they flow the best, are actually all the ones that have learned to love the click. So anyway, that would be the first thing. Above all, Brian says this: you have to play. You have to play enough. But what was he say? If you can play a straight beat for 5 minutes, then you've earned one fill. And that's just huge. When I first got to playing drums, all I knew, I was from Philadelphia, all gospel and hip hop stuff. So the fancier, the better. And sound guys hated me. As a joke, they would always tell me to play an AC/DC beat, because at least that would be like the simplest thing. Just boom, boom, boom. And they were like, finally, okay. So it became this joke. Every time they would ask me to play, they're like, JP, all right, let's start on the drums. Simple. Simple. I'm like, thank you, wherever you are. But that changed everything. I learned to love what we call the pocket. And what that means is just playing the beat, not deviating from it, not expressing yourself. Well, the Holy Spirit came, and I just had to go. Anyway, over time, it actually is more honoring to your band, to your worship leader, to the congregation, and to just the overall scene of what we're trying to do. When you take on the position as, I will be the backbone. My whole job as a drummer is to support this worship leader, make him look like a genius, and then be the glue for everybody else. The minute you adopt that is the minute you actually become a leader. When you become a leader, then you can finally set a rhythm. If you think you're just a drummer, then you're just going to be playing like a drummer. If you think of yourself as one of the leaders on the stage and the worship leader's right-hand man, then you can actually play worship drums. because your whole purpose is to support them.
And it's super good. And just for me, you know, in my journey, the drummer is the right-hand guy. He's the most crucial person in that entire equation. If I travel and I can't bring a whole entire band, I always bring my drummer, hands down, because I can survive bad bass notes and terrible crate tone or, you know, whatever it may be. I can survive it all if I know my drummer is right there, you know, beside me. I can weather just about any moment. Not that it's fun, but they're the most vital person to how the rest of the band is able to function. And probably for me, I look for someone who is solid. I don't care what they can do, you know, in terms of thing. If they can't just hold down a basic beat and make it feel great, and then they're never going to play with me, you know. Someone has to be able to just be very, very simple and locked in, and it just releases me as a worship leader in a big-time way. So what he's saying is gold.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, I mean, I'll definitely get into practical stuff, but for all, actually, who's a drummer out here? Can you raise your hand? Who plays drums? Raise them high. Come on, the worship leader's not looking. There you go. That's awesome. Yeah, I just want to call you guys into leadership. It's a really big deal. Honestly, I came to Bethel thinking that I'd be a worship leader. And when I didn't make it, I didn't realize till about halfway into the first year that I got promoted. I got promoted because the Lord wanted to show me that actually you get to lead now from the back. You get to be this foundation. You get to build something that is so solid that everybody else can stand on. And it's not a cocky thing. It's not even a pride thing, because it's a struggle and a battle every day. But it's like you take this in as an honor. You are a worshiper first and foremost. Then you're a servant. Then you're a leader. The first person you get to lead is yourself. After that, then you can add all the glit and glam. But yeah, I don't mean to get deep, but I definitely do mean to get deep. Yeah, really take that seriously, and it'll change your life. You'll literally not only just understand the rhythms of what's happening in the worship, but in your life in general. You'll literally get onto a rhythm, and you'll learn to just love that. So if you think I'm a little weird or you got more questions, talk to me. I'll probably get weirder and leave you with more questions. But so the practical thing. Drums is actually, in my opinion, the coolest instrument because it has the full range of the aural spectrum. You have the bass notes, you have all the mids, and you have all the treble. So you have this really, really interesting opportunity to blend and stick out at any given point in time. So first and foremost, when you look at a drum set, it's like I want to play the part and I want to sit in with everybody. I want to that I'm blending in as much as possible. Yeah, I don't know. I guess that's first and foremost. But the next thing would be it's also a melodic instrument. So you can get on a drum kit that is a $7,000 drum kit, and it can still sound like crap if you don't know how to tune it. And sometimes that's really hard to tune when you guys all get here at the same time, and a guitar player is working on his tone, a worship leader is just working on his anointing or the flow, his vocal riffs, you know, just trying to get in the moment, you know. And the most annoying thing to hear is cap, 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 cap. They're like, shut up. So, practical way to actually get past that is just be the dude who's known to show up early. You know, if sound check's at 6 o'clock, get there at 5:30. Talk to the sound guy or talk to whoever's running the building. Like, hey, by the way, I'm playing Thursday or I'm playing Friday or Sunday or whatever. Can I get there early? Most likely someone's going to be here anyway. And just get here when there's nobody around and just tune the drums. And that's a simple thing. I won't get into tuning for now because that's a whole other class. But get there early and get a reputation for doing that. Because drummers have a long stigma to break as it is, as being the wild ones or the, all over the place. If you can become a dude that's actually the most, constant and trustworthy guy there, it'll change the entire atmosphere that entire night. And just every time someone even looks at, on the roster and they see your name, it just brings, a peace to them. Next thing is know the songs. Sometimes we we'll just kind of feel it out. We'll just, it's not that bad. I just played drums. It's it's 4/4 or 6/8. That's fine. But really knowing the songs and knowing how it's played or someone else played it, mimic them until you have it locked down, and then add your flavor later on. But before that, make sure you know how to play the song perfectly, because you'll actually learn more that way than if you try to be creative first. Next thing, set the kit up to suit you. I'm a small guy. Everybody else at Bethel that plays drums are, they're giants to me. So I would always get on the kit, and everything is all over the place, and I'm doing this. Is this right? Is this how I play? And it wasn't until, honestly, a little bit ago that I sat down and literally spent the time to drop some of this stuff or to raise some of the toms or lower them. And just a real quick thing, I usually do hi-hats at my bicep level. That way I'm not reaching over. It's not getting, messing with my shoulder. I like to have everything really, really relaxed. I put it right about here, so it's super comfortable. When I sit down, I like to sit down before I even step onto the kit and just look where I put my feet. And then I like to match up my hi-hat and my kick pedal with that way. So instead of sitting down the kit and then trying to just move everything around and, is this good? We're ready to set up? Just sit down and say the kit's right there. Sit down here, and then kind of you get just an idea of where your body's even positioned, and then move in and start to set up your kit. I don't know. That changed my life for me. And honestly, don't try to bring everything really close to you, because that's not how any of your movements are naturally anyway. For that kit, it has a floor tom and another floor tom as well, and sometimes we can put them right next to each other, but that requires you to move over, and it's just not natural. So what I do is I actually move it out so it's more of this kind of thing, and that just helps a ton, especially if you want to do anything syncopated or fast in the moment. Everything is just natural, and it's all right there in front of you. Next thing, if we're doing click track, I don't know if you guys, for the ones that are doing it or who wants to start it, get the BPM list. What we started doing is I would make a log every time I play with someone. I would get the BPM for the song and then save it. And then I get home and I'd alphabetize it. And so I have a master list. So anytime someone wants to pull up a song, I can immediately go to it and drop it into this program that I use called Ableton Live. And once I have that, I feel so prepared, and it's finally we're able to start the musical experience. Now, if that takes you 15 minutes to do the whole thing, awesome. If that takes you half an hour, it takes you half an hour. But just prepare that before you show up to any kind of set, because that'll just change everything. All right, again, rehearsal real quick. For rehearsal, it's the time to experiment, but within the song. And what I mean by that is, and I've learned this firsthand. Sometimes we all get together and we're excited. We haven't seen each other in a little bit. Someone plays something for 5 seconds that repeats itself, and before you know it, the drummer wants to play a beat on it, and then the guitar player comes in, and the piano player comes in, and then the worship leader is sitting there all right, guys, you ready? Are we going to do this? And it just kind of causes some frustration, but you don't really realize it because you're this is awesome, yeah. Just avoid that. And I'm guilty of it a lot, but the less I do it, the easier the whole day becomes for me. And then when we come back to the hotel. But yeah, as far as that, when I said experimenting, during a tune, pick a spot. And what I mean by pick a spot is pick one spot in the entire song to do, to just showcase you. And I'll give you a practical example. Say you start off a song from the top, you're big. You come back in verse 1, play the part verbatim. Don't add anything extra. You'd go from the verse to the chorus, something simple. If you're in a 4, it beats like this. It just boom, cat, boom, cat, boom. That's the whole fill. We're into the chorus. Coming out of the chorus, go back to the verse, same thing. Play it verbatim. Going into the second chorus, maybe you can add something different like dum dum ba ba da da boom. That's it. Coming out of that, we go into a bridge, right? If we're going to a bridge, this is like you're building up. Now you can do something that will exemplify the intensity of it and also follow the rhythm of the bridge, like what's being sung, like right before that. So you can kind of set something up, and maybe it's a build, da 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 da, ga-goom, ba-boom, ba-bam. Like that's huge. But that's still not anything like super, super crazy. Maybe after the bridge, going into the chorus is when you set up that one fill. But that one fill is coming from a vocabulary that you have, that you've practiced tons and tons of times. You're not just kind of like, this is the part where I'm just going to see what happens. Hopefully Holy Spirit will land me on the one. But you're still pulling something out that you know. And that's to me, like, that's the one time to shine. Everything else, you're serving the song, you're serving the leader, you're serving the congregation. That's my biggest tip I could give to all you guys as far as drummers are concerned. Because the funny thing is, it actually makes you sound way cooler. If you wait for one part in the entire song to do something, when you do it, everyone's going to be like, oh, that's nasty. But if you play that like 6 or 7 times before we get into the second chorus, people are just going to be like, oh my gosh, yeah, no, oh, there it is again. Yeah, that's nice. Yeah, that's cool. Because drums and any kind of music is like a conversation. If someone's talking constantly, even if it's awesome, you get to a point where you just shut off. You just stop listening to them. But if there's someone that's sitting there and they're listening and they respond in very short, concise sentences, when they do give you something that's maybe longer than, 10 or 12 words, it's like, whoa, it's impactful. And you leave with a respect for that person, like, that is a smart guy. So anyway, that would be kind of my ins and outs of the whole drumming.
I love it.